Hello and welcome to Android Design in Action. My name is Roman Nurik.
Hey guys, Adam Kosh.
And unfortunately, Nick Butcher is stuck at Devoxx and trying to figure out a way to join us via Google Plus Hangout. So he may join at some point, hopefully quite soon, but we're going to give him a few extra minutes. But for those of you who are new to the show, it seems like Nick is joining. Has Nick joined? Producer Pete? Nick has joined. Hopefully he can hear us. Can you hear us, Nick?
There he is.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Finally.
Yep.
Yeah, we were for those that weren't watching, we were having some trouble getting Nick connected, but Nick is now connected live via Devoxx. Nick, you want to do a quick introduction?
Hey, yeah, absolutely. So I'm here at the Devoxx conference in Antwerp. So it's been a fantastic kind of Java-based conference. So hearing the latest in the world of Java and talking some about Android. We delivered a code lab yesterday telling people how they can sync data between their different Android apps using Google Drive in the background. It was also cool to hang out with some of the Android framework engineers like Romangi and people like that and hear about all the latest improvements in the UI toolkit. So really nice conference.
Awesome. And we're very envious that we can't be there with you, Nick, but we're hoping you guys are having a great conference. So for those of you that are new to Android Design in Action, in this show we look at existing apps, and sometimes we look at existing categories of apps and look at what types of design renovations or design reimaginings we can do for them. On this episode, we're going to cover instant messaging, and we're not going to go too deeply into that because we have some more important stuff to talk about, and that is community redesigns. So last week on Android Design in Action, we gave kind of a mission, a challenge to the community to take an app that that you've seen before. And potentially that you maybe don't like the layout for, and rethink it, redesign it yourself. Use your Photoshop skills, use your sketching skills, and put up a public redesign of that app. And we've gotten a lot of contestants, and well, actually not really contestants, a lot of entries, and we're going to take a look at some of those today, and then as well as talk about the tablet UI stencils that we promised to give away before. So let's get started and jump into instant messaging. So what we did was we took a look at, rather than take a look at existing apps like GroupMe and Trillian that were covered in last week's App Clinic, we wanted to think of what would a hypothetical awesome IM client or messaging client look like. And so we came up with a few screen mocks for what that could look like. And we didn't give it a name or anything, so it's just called Hypothetical Messaging App. And you can see here, this is kind of one of the key, hero screens for the app. It's basically the conversation view. In this view, you're communicating with a bunch of different people. In this case, you're Luke Skywalker talking to all your friends. And the point here is that we didn't want to really emphasize all the Chrome around instant messaging, like all the action bar stuff and the action buttons that we talk about usually. We really wanted to focus on how you present the content. So here you can notice that there's three different types of content, really. There's rich information about a place that you've shared, a rich kind of audio snippet with, transcribed text, and then a bunch of photos that you submitted. So that's kind of, at a very basic level, what this screen shows you, and it's really just a conversation view. You guys have any preliminary comments before we keep going? No. Okay.
I have something quick. I just really like the fact that there's rich content included here directly. I think we've moved beyond having just text in instant messaging clients, and now we have phones which you can take pictures, you can record audio. Obviously, sharing places is very important, so I just really like how the sort of different content types have been brought out here.
And a lot of this isn't new. Existing apps like GroupMe already do this. So you can share your current location or share, actually I don't know if you can share a place, but I think you can check in with Foursquare, for example. And you can also share pictures. So existing apps do this, but what we'd really like to see is more and more apps doing this, because it's no longer, like you said, Adam, about just text. You really want to share content or objects. In the next screen, you'll notice that when you touch the little attach icon on the bottom left, you could be presented with things like take a photo, record some audio, and then maybe automatically transcribe it. And then, obviously attach location, things like that. But one of the coolest things that I really want instant messaging clients to start thinking about is streaming video. And this is kind of interesting because you have things like Google Plus Hangouts where you can basically create a shared meeting space with your friends and with your family, and all be on video at the same time. But something, for some reason I was thinking about, like what about those push to talk days, Sprint Nextel, where you'd push, say something and everybody would hear it streaming live. What if you could do that with video? So I did a quick mock-up, let's skip this one, did a quick mock-up of what that could look like. So you press like stream, I guess you press the attach icon and select stream video from your camera. It immediately changes the compose box into basically a preview of your front-facing camera. As you're talking, it's streaming live in the stream of the conversation to everybody else. And then for you, as the recorder, you kind of just see, this kind of live token in the stream. And then maybe as people are saying stuff, as they're responding to your video, they can kind of type and type and type, and it'll maybe stick your video feed to the top of their window. That wasn't mocked up, of course. But.
So just to be clear, the video is actually playing inline in the conversation view, right? And would there be like a full screen mode as well? Or,
yeah. So I mean, like, we didn't mock this up. I think if we had some more time, we'd totally do this. But the idea would be like, you're streaming video. It's not like actually it is recorded. So after you press this checkbox to indicate that you're done, that video is just a token that's playable, kind of like a YouTube video or whatever that's attached. But inline, in the stream, if somebody's currently streaming video, you can watch it inline or full screen it. So this is something that I just haven't seen other apps do, and I think that it's something that, like, think about ways to compose rich content. Not only view rich content, but compose it, right? And so another one of these, in another one of these screenshots or mocks, you have this kind of composition window that can accept tokens. So let's say you paste a URL. What if you just paste a token indicating that this is a URL object? And maybe a place is also kind of like a place token or such. So this is just something that I think folks should think about.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
With the images as well, that you can scroll those inline.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have, where is it? Let's go back here, right? If you have a set of like 6 or 7 images that you've attached, then you should probably support the share intent, right? So if I'm in gallery, I select 8 images, I should be able to share to my messaging client. If I get, I guess, a converse or a message with 8 images, I should be able to swipe through them left and right, inline.
That's awesome. Yeah, so many apps. There's like a lot of, I guess you call it pogo sticking, where you have to go up and down, in and out, and have all these kind of context switches. So I love the idea of like staying within a fluent conversation, but being able to kind of take in all the media types is cool.
Yeah, and this is something that the Gmail recently did with the update, with the Android 4.2 update. Gmail now lets you have this kind of mini gallery view within an email message, right? So if you get an email message with 10 attachments, you don't have to jump in to see each individual one. You basically have a horizontally swipeable gallery for that email messages of the attachments that were there. So rather than spend too much time on instant messaging, again, the main event is coming up. The last thing I just want to talk about is the tablet UI that we've designed here. So again, this is fairly standard, a very simple master detail view where on the left you have a master list of all your conversations, and then on the right you have your conversation view. Now, the important thing to note here, and this is kind of where the interesting part of tablets comes in, is there's a lot of ways to optimize for a tablet. On the left, obviously, we're combining screens, but on the right, you'll notice that the presentation of the conversation itself is slightly different. We've increased the padding, the spacing, the margins to kind of let the core content float freely within your bounds, so that it's not kind of compressed into one of the corners and edges. So like the spacing between the conversation and the avatar is increased, between the avatar and the kind of the side of the screen. And then everything is just bigger. Like these images are no longer a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. They're kind of slightly wider to again account for the extra width you have on that screen. And then there's just like everything is larger, right? So this composition window or this composition bar at the bottom is, I forgot the exact dimensions it shows, but it's about 1.5 to 2 times as tall for a much larger, more accessible touch target. And then at the very top, this presence bar that shows you all of the people that are currently viewing the conversation, as well as all the people that are involved in the conversation. That's also slightly larger to give the thumbnails more space to breathe. So that's kind of just one example of how you could take something as simple as a list of messages and turn it into a great tablet UI. Before we jump into our main event, talking about all the awesome stuff that the community has done, anything else you guys want to talk about in terms of IM and messaging clients?
I guess one thing I wanted to mention was there's a lot of popular IM clients out there on the Play Store, but for some reason, like the most popular ones typically do a pretty poor job at the actual presentation and design. Maybe because they've been around for a long time, maybe because they focus more on the functionality. I'm not sure, but personally, I'd really love a client that just had a great design and worked really, really well.
Yeah,
like this, for example.
I think also just on top of that, just getting the details right, like making sure notifications work, making sure things are quick, that you never miss anything. That's also important. But on top of that, to go above and beyond your competition, having a great tablet UI and having a strong visual presentation of the content itself, of the messages and your friends that you're talking with, that's gonna put you above and beyond. All right, so let's move on to the main event. So as we mentioned in the beginning, last week we set out a challenge to the community to take a look at one of the apps you use regularly or one of the apps that you just don't like how it looks or whatever, and redesign it. Think about what if that company were to hire you to redesign the entire app, what would that look like? What are some of the key things you'd use? And the response was just crazy, phenomenal.
Overwhelming. I was so impressed.
We thought we were going to get 4, maybe 5, but it was very, very impressive.
Yeah, we got a lot of submissions, and if you'd like, you can actually check them all out now. If you go on Google Plus and search for these 2 hashtags here for public posts tagged with those, you'll see all these entries. But we've done a quick kind of collage of what all the entries look like, and we'll just quickly show you a few. So this is just all the great content that the community has come up with. Really phenomenal. There's some tablet layouts here. We'll talk about Catch That Bus in a moment. IMDb by Paul Burke was a great job. Last.fm we'll talk about, and Good Food, which is a Nexus 7 specific layout. And Nick, I believe you've looked at Good Food specifically, right?
Yeah, I've been talking to the developers of it, and I think there's some really good ideas in this redesign.
Yeah, this is on. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these developers are gonna have to look at some of these screenshots now and say, let's get cracking. Let's figure out how to implement some of this. So overall, really great work. And there's another page of this. Again, lots of tablet UIs. This one down here at the bottom left. This was for speed test, right? And we'll talk about that.
Yep.
Android guys, lots of good stuff going on here. So great work overall. These are the entrants that participated and submitted something. So again, round of applause for them all. I think overall it was a phenomenal job by the community. And then regarding the stencil, we originally said that we were going to give out 10 of the UI stencils from uistencils.com. So first of all, before we jump into who we're giving things to, you can of course purchase them at uistencils.com and click on the Android tablet kit. So that should be available today. But for all of the entrants that submitted something, basically everybody here, we'll be sending you guys a UI stencil from uistencils.com, and we'll be reaching out to you on Google Plus to find out your shipping address and all that. So great job, really well done, and you're all getting stencils. So with that, let's move on to some of the highlights. We wanted to pick a few of the community entries and look at them in detail and say a few words about what we loved about them. So first is WhatsApp. Adam, you want to talk about WhatsApp?
Yeah, so this is an app I actually personally use quite heavily. I guess grudgingly use it. It's one of those apps where a ton of my friends across the world kind of use it a lot, so I'm sort of forced to use it. It's actually pretty good in terms of functionality. Like, it's very responsive, it's very quick, and it's very simple to use, but the design is definitely lacking. They certainly have the menu button of shame down the bottom there. It's a very dated looking UI. And it's just, I don't think they have much sort of visual flair, I guess. It's very plain. So the redesign of this, very, very nice, by Maximilian Solomon. Hopefully I'm not slaughtering that name pronunciation. But it's a really nice reimagining of the app with the holo theming. Let's see if we can just zoom in here a bit.
You probably want to shift it over so we're not blocking. Yeah.
Yeah. It actually uses a few things that Roman put into the hypothetical messaging app as well. So the one thing I'm not sure about actually is the top tabs, what that would be used for, but I really like just the conversation list here, plus the split action bar down the bottom for the quick actions. It's worth noting as well that those split actions down the bottom would be evenly spaced, if you implemented using the standard split action bar on Android. But yeah, it's nice. You've got the sort of snippet of text there with the emoji still showing. You've got the unread message count showing there directly. And instead of using a long press to trigger the contextual action menu, they've got the little triangle down the bottom right corner there to signify that there's sort of additional actions that you could take on that particular conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then a bunch of the additional actions have been collapsed under the overflow menu there that you wouldn't sort of necessarily access all the time. Guys, any thoughts on this screen?
This I just personally like, and this is a theme throughout, the choice of colors and the color palettes that were chosen throughout all of the contestants were really, really strong. I thought that kind of the combination of the dark teal and green color, it fits in with the branding of WhatsApp. I mean, I don't know too much about the company and the app, but it seems to fit with that kind of that green brand. And in the original screen you see here on the left, there is no hint to that at all. So I thought the branding here is particularly good, and obviously using the holo elements is awesome. But I think even more interesting was the second screen, right?
Yes.
In this screen, this is kind of the conversation detail view, where it shows all the different messages that have been going back and forth between you and your friends. And I think that the redesign of this screen, particularly for me, just was a stark contrast.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think this was quite good. I mean, even these little details, like having the little triangular callouts include part of the image. So like, the simplest way to implement something like this is, you just have the callout, which is always white, and then if there's an image, then you show the image to the right of that. But here the developer, or the designer, has shown that, let's not do that. Let's actually make the image part of the callout. And again, it gives you this feeling of immersiveness, that it's an image that's taking up the entire space, that it's kind of like this free form piece of content. I can't really put it into great words, but that's the feeling I get from that. Nick, anything else you want to add to the awesome WhatsApp design, or should we move on?
I like it. It's very clean. It looks like an Android app to me now. Good job.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, so next we have Last.fm. And Last.fm, this is the old screen. So what you're currently looking at is the current app. Last.fm is basically an app that lets you kind of look at radio stations, or I guess online radio stations, and play them and whatnot. Kind of similar to Pandora. It's been around for quite a long time. I actually know one of the former developers. The app is written really well, and the app is actually open source. So it's quite a good, strong app in terms of using Android features, but the design is kind of dated. So
kind of dated isn't probably an understatement there.
So you can see that they're using the old Eclair style tabs. They're using these right-facing carrots, and really just the content screens aren't really that immersive. You just have seas of white and splotches of text here and there.
Really tiny images
Yeah.
In the list view there.
So I think if we were to give out awards at all, I think the starkest contrast between old and new goes to this one. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Walmer has done an awesome job redesigning this. Here's the new screen. So you could see that, complete shift in terms of, color palette, in terms of content first, right? I mean, the images just immediately stick out, right? Like, that's the first thing you see is the content. But also, I mean, he's done a great job introducing some of that branding, right? The color palette here is very strong. It's kind of that red, dark gray, white theme, and it's really strong here. It's a really good job, introducing that color palette here. Some of the specific things I wanted to point out, and this is something that doesn't get enough attention, I think, is when you have list items or grid items, basically collection views, spend some time on the individual layout for each row or each cell. Here, there's a really interesting presentation where you kind of couple the content, the album art, as well as who is sharing that. So this is kind of a great way to show two pieces of content layered on top of another. And then, as you can see here, there's just tons of that red shown everywhere, and it's really kind of really powerful, evoking that brand everywhere throughout.
Couple of details I'd like to call out as well. I think they've done a really nice job of with the branding, like you say, extending the color palette throughout. But also, I don't see people do this enough, is having a full-on like Last.fm logo on the top level screen. But then you don't need to have that taking up a lot of space throughout every level of the hierarchy. So I love the way they've kind of got the collapsed representation on the kind of child screens, which allows you to use the title more effectively, which I think is a really nice detail. They've done very well there.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something that the I/O app does. So I mean, if you want to see how it's done in terms of implementation, just take a look at the Google I/O app, which is open source, and it does this, showing a logo on your home screen and then just an icon, which is again customizable. It doesn't have to be your launcher icon, just an icon on detail screens and category screens. So moving on from Last.fm, the next app is Speedtest. Adam, you want to talk about Speedtest?
Yeah, Speedtest, for those of you who haven't used this app, it's a pretty simple app, at least on the Android side. I'm sure there's a bunch of infrastructure on the server side, but it's used just for measuring the speed of the connection that you have. So it could be measuring Wi-Fi connection, could be measuring 3G, 4G, whatever connection that you have to the server. So it really does just two things. It measures your speed, it does a speed test, and it stores your historical tests, so you can see where you were and which speeds you got. It's actually fairly popular. People have used this service, at least in the US, for quite a while. We don't have a shot of the original app here. I don't know, this might almost get the award for stark contrast as well. The interesting thing about the current app is that it actually locks itself to particular dimensions. I'm not even sure how they did it. I think they would have had to go out of their way specifically to do that. So even on my Nexus 4, it shows in a small cropped window with black space around it, which is really peculiar.
It's almost like framed, not even letterboxed.
Yeah.
It's framed in like black pixels.
Yeah, definitely. And if you load it up on a tablet, it does the same thing. It's just this tiny little window in the middle of the screen. So I like this just because it really simplifies the look and feel. It brings the content out and it sticks to sort of the roots of what the app is trying to do here: measure the speed and show your historical entries.
It also has elements of the new clock app, I think, to it. The new stopwatch app that shipped with Android 4.2, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I mean, not much else to comment here other than I think it looks really nice. The whole thing is great. And it really sticks to a sort of main navigation that we would recommend for an app like this. Menu button, action bar, tabs, and then two content panes on the tablet UI.
And I think the other thing I just want to point out for the tablet UI is look how much you can do just changing metrics, just changing dimensions. The only difference, and I'm guessing that the assets are probably the same. They're probably not even using any assets. This is probably some custom drawing if you were to implement this. But the font sizes are slightly larger. The spacing between elements is slightly larger. The size of that circle is obviously larger. But then just like, it's really just about spacing, font size, and just dimensions and metrics. And then obviously having, if you're showing images, showing those images at full resolution. But it's really shows the power of what you can do with just dimensions. So for developers out there, if you just extract your dimensions into dimension resources, you don't even have to create a tablet-specific layout in a lot of cases. You just change the dimensions for tablets.
Yep. Good job, Glenn Barker.
So, yeah, I guess the takeaway for designers for that is, don't be scared about having something that looks similar, but then you call out different switching points at which you say the text size should be larger, because that's really easy for developers to do.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe we should probably do a future episode on how to best annotate that in your mockups. That's definitely something that it requires some logic, like if this, then that. Maybe we should talk about that a little more. But anyway, let's move on to the next app since we're running a little low on time. IMDb. Nick, do you want to talk about IMDb?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I really liked about this redesign in particular was they didn't but they didn't only apply hollow look and feel to it. They also took a stab at looking at the information architecture. So when I say they, it's Paul Burt. Good job, Paul. He looked at the way that kind of people, or he and his friends, he says, use IMDb, and it definitely resonated with me that you're quite often using mobile in a different context than you are using their website. And he's kind of really rearranged the hierarchy of the information to make things like, you're watching a movie, you want to see what who the actor is or what other movies they've been in, and make that really, really quick. And he's used images really well, I think, throughout the app to make it very quick to see what's going on and visually kind of like parse the app.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't see this here. In one of his mock-ups, he basically hid all the trivia information, like the birth date and so on for the actor, hid that under an expandable item here at the top. And that's kind of, it's nice, right, to be able to, focus on the stuff that you immediately want to see on mobile. I mean, you probably want to see, oh my God, I just saw somebody, is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt? You want to be able to, tell by looking at some photos. Maybe you're not as interested about when they were born or, where they grew up or something on the go. So definitely a kind of a good rethinking of the entire experience on mobile. What is the user trying to get at? And then when you touch on one of these movie titles, it kind of gives you a very quick pop-up. I'd probably use something besides a pop-up, but it shows you a very quick pop-up showing you the immediately important things like the rating and then I think the Metascore. So like obviously you want to see if movies are good. On the go, you're deciding between something. Making that rating number or star meter or whatever really prominent is probably pretty important.
Yeah, generally dialogue's not the answer, but I would quite like to see that perhaps as another expand in place, a bit like he has for the extra information about the actor. That could be quite fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think the last that we have today is Catch That Bus. And I'll just briefly mention the one thing I loved about this is just the focus on the different screens. Basically, and actually this is implemented already. The designer / developer, as part of the redesign, actually re-implemented everything. So if you go ahead and download Catch That Bus, this is what it looks like.
That is design in action. Wow.
Exactly, it's design and implementation in action. Wow. But the one thing I loved here is that he clearly thought about the different screen sizes, and that's something that's more and more important as you have devices like Nexus 10, Nexus 7 out there. And the other thing that I loved here is the color choices. Again, the single accent color where they're using yellow as the accent color is really unique, and it really stands out throughout the app. And you can see that kind of yellow is everywhere. Yellow is in the tab selections, yellow is in the core iconography, and in the launcher icon. So I think it's
even in the settings screen. I think is this the one where he'd coloured some of the switches in the settings screen. It really thorough branding.
For sure.
Good job.
Yeah, so great work. I think that's the last one we had. Any other notes around the community stuff, guys?
Only that some of the others were also fantastic. We just didn't have time to cover all of them, but great job, guys. Yeah, really, really great.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've been really enjoying is actually just seeing a community of people evolving around the #Android design hashtag, certainly on Google+. That I'd love to see this continue. It's been fantastic to see all the conversation, seeing people dive into other people's redesigns and offering feedback, and then people, iterating on their designs. That's been incredible.
I should say, if you get feedback on your design, don't take that as like somebody criticizing you. It's really, we're in general trying to provide kind of positive feedback, and just learn from what others are doing. If they give you criticism, that's totally positively minded. They're not trying to tell you that you suck or anything like that. So. Just before we sign off, I really want to quickly give a shout out to Taylor, who is actually also one of the entrants. He submitted a redesign for Google Finance, and he just this morning released a sketching kit update. Basically, this is a sketching kit that you can print out onto A4 paper. It's kind of like a template that shows you the real sizes of the Nexus 4, the Nexus 10, Nexus 7. I think he's got all the Nexus devices in there. So if you're interested in doing some sketching, definitely download Taylor's kit. So with that, I think that's it for this week's episode. Nick, thanks for joining from the conference. It's been fun.
Glad I could find a stable internet connection.
Yeah, pretty remarkable that you haven't dropped off.
Yeah, good work. And not really design news, but the Nexus devices, the new Nexus devices are on sale today. So happy Nexus Day, everyone. And
indeed, I'll be buying some as soon as they're available in the US. All right, well, that's it for Android Design. Thanks for coming, thanks for showing up, and thanks for watching. My name is Roman Eric.
Adam Kosh.
And Nick Twitcher. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
See
guys.
you guys next week.
Bye.